The visitor at the window. It started the same way it always does. The warm haze of sleep wrapped itself around me, a cocoon of comfort. The clock on my nightstand glowed dimly in the darkness. 3:16 a.m. That was the last thing I remembered seeing before I woke up. Or at least, I thought I woke up. My eyes fluttered open to an all-too-familiar sensation. I was trapped. My body refused to move, as though something unseen held me down against the mattress. My arms, my legs, they weren't my own anymore, just weights fused to the bed beneath me. It didn't matter how hard I struggled in my mind. Every command I gave to my body was met with cruel defiance. Then the air in the room changed. It became thick and cold, seeping through my skin like an icy wind had invaded the space. My room was bathed in its usual muted darkness, yet shadows began to flicker unnaturally across the walls. My gaze, fixed out of sheer necessity, landed on the window just to the left of my bed. It was slightly ajar, something I hadn't done before lying down. The curtain billowed outward, revealing the dense black void of the night outside. That's when I saw it. At first, it was just a faint outline of a figure in the moonlight. I might have thought it was a trick of the light, but as my panic rose, the figure leaned forward into clearer view. It wasn't a person. The face had too many features crammed into spaces where they didn't belong. An extra set of nostrils, lips that stretched sideways instead of downward, and eyes that glowed faintly yellow but never blinked. Its head cocked to one side, like it was considering me. Was I prey? A curiosity? I wanted to scream as its clawed fingers wrapped around the edge of the window pane. It pulled its grotesque form forward, squeezing its broad shoulders through an opening far too narrow to accommodate it. Bones cracked audibly as it contorted and slithered onto the floor like some macabre puppet. The creature moved deliberately, its feet gliding silently along the hardwood as it approached the bed. It crouched at the edge, tilting its head back and forth, almost playfully. And then, as if bored with inspecting me, it placed one sharp nail against my chest. The pressure increased. It wasn't just heavy, it burned like fire racing through my skin. The yellow glow of its eyes dimmed as it leaned in close to my face. Its lips parted unnaturally, revealing rows of jagged teeth as it whispered,
"You'll stay awake forever."
I jolted upright, drenched in sweat. The window was closed, and the curtains hung still. But the burning pressure on my chest lingered, and my sheets smelled faintly of ash. Two, the man in the hat. I've heard about sleep paralysis before. I even remember laughing at the idea in some late-night documentary. "A man in a hat staring at you?" I'd said, rolling my eyes at the grainy footage of reenactments. It seemed silly at the time, but now I understand why they couldn't fully capture the terror of the experience. When it first happened, I was lying on my side, facing the door of my room. I was groggy, half awake but unable to tell where my dream ended and reality began. Something felt wrong in the air around me, like a storm had rolled in, silent and charged with tension. The feeling was oppressive, heavy on my chest and limbs. I tried to stretch, to push myself up and check the time, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I couldn't even close my eyes again, though every fiber of my being wanted to. Then came the sound. Slow, deliberate footsteps. They echoed softly, as though coming from far down a hallway, but they were steadily growing closer. My bedroom door, slightly ajar, creaked open wider. And there he was. The man was tall, unnaturally so, and his head nearly scraped the top of the doorway. He wore an old-fashioned hat, the kind you might see in those noir detective films, tilted forward enough to obscure most of his face. But beneath the brim, I could make out a thin, almost skeletal grin. He stepped into the room slowly, his black coat swishing faintly against the carpet. I tried to convince myself this wasn't real. I willed myself to wake up, but the harder I struggled, the more firmly his presence rooted me in place. When he stopped at the foot of my bed, he tilted his hat slightly upward, revealing black holes where eyes should have been. He didn't speak, not with words. Instead, something deep within my own mind echoed with his thoughts. "You've seen too much. I've always been here." Then he climbed into bed. He didn't shift the mattress, didn't displace the covers. He simply slipped into the space next to me, laid his skeletal face on the pillow, and stared directly into mine with his hollow gaze. The worst part wasn't the terror. It was how calm I felt as he remained there, watching. When the paralysis broke, the feeling lingered like he'd never truly left. Three, the crawling thing. The dream was pleasant at first. I remember being in a bright, open field, sunlight warming my face. Everything was crisp, golden, peaceful. But dreams like that don't last long, and soon the sunlight dimmed, turning gray. I awoke, or thought I awoke, to utter stillness. The warmth I'd felt was replaced by a clammy chill that clung to my skin like damp fabric. My arms and legs were frozen, though I desperately tried to twist free of whatever invisible grip held me in place. The worst part was the sound. The faint rustle of movement from the corner of the room, right where my closet door hung half open. At first, I told myself it was nothing, maybe a draft. But the sound grew louder and more distinct, the soft padding of something crawling on all fours. My breath caught in my throat as it came into view. A misshapen figure, contorted as though its bones were shoved together incorrectly, crawled out from the shadows. Its face was round and featureless, except for a mouth far too wide. As it drew closer to the foot of my bed, it dragged itself upward, folding over me like a grotesque spider. Its head twitched unnaturally, swaying back and forth, while that too wide mouth cracked into a smile. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. Its head lowered until it was inches from mine, and I could smell its rancid breath, hot and metallic. It laughed softly, the sound gurgling like water spilling over rocks, before whispering,
"You can't stop me. I'll always find you."
When I finally woke for real, my throat was raw as if I'd been screaming into the void, but no one else had heard a sound. Before you vanish into the night, mark your stay, like subscribe and ring the bell. Your connection to the darkness ensures you'll never miss the whispers of another tale.